Oh, you're good.
All right, there we go. What's going on, man? How are you?
I'm chilling, man. How are you?
I'm doing good. You said you got you're getting some travel stuff good. Recruiting season, right?
Recruiting season, man. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
down in Florida. So my folks live near Orlando.
Okay.
So me and my wife were down uh to see them, and then I'm staying. I'll be in Orlando for a week, and then Fort Myers area for about a half a week.
Okay.
And then go back to campus after
Yeah.
that.
Are you guys are is everyone on the road for you, or is there kind of someone staying back and maintaining home base?
Yeah, so we always kind of do it. Right now, the two coordinators and myself are on the road at our distant places. So
Right.
the DC's in Houston, the OC's in Dallas. I'm in Florida, and then some of like the younger guys and stuff like that will hit some of the local, like down
Okay.
Pensacola way, the south side of the state of Mississippi. But there will always be guys in the office
Sure.
while anybody's on the road. So it's not
Sure.
like it's a completely a ghost town, you know.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember because my experience was so weird because I had COVID in between everything, so it
Mm.
kind of threw everything for a loop. I'm trying to remember my first year in 2019. I want to say there was like a good 2 week window where we all were gone. Like
Yeah.
we were all on like I was down in Tennessee and Illinois.
Mm.
Our defensive coordinator was in like California. Our head coach at the time, excuse me, was in Arizona. Our offensive coordinator at the time was in Florida. So like we were, and even the part-time guys. Now maybe the part-time guys were doing like local, so they were
Yeah.
on campus like in the afternoon. But still, it was yeah, we were gone for like two. We didn't see each other in person for like 2 3 weeks. It was wild.
What was actually funny, our running back coach, who's an offensive line guy, he's actually a Millsaps alum, played offensive line at Millsaps. He sent me a TikTok, and I don't have TikTok because I'm not gonna do that. I'm not going down that rabbit hole. So whenever he does it, he sends me a text version of it and says, reminder to show, he's like, remind me to show you this. And I'm like, dog, I'm not going to see you until December 12th.
Right.
Like, you may as well just screen record that sucker and send it to me because that's going to be so buried in text by the time
Right.
we
We got
we
some
actually
time.
see each other again, you know. Yeah,
That's
that's right.
funny.
So no, it's the only time we're really all out of the office is we all go out in May right after graduation, right as the high schools are finishing up. That's
Yep.
when pretty much usually there's only one guy in the office, if any.
Yeah.
Everybody's out on the road during that time.
Yeah, very cool. I actually, I know there's a lot of coaches, especially at like the D3 level who are like, oh, it's such a grind, but I enjoyed it. I enjoyed going out and driving around and meeting coaches and talking to kids
Mhm.
and kind of living in the car, for
Yeah.
a couple weeks at a time. It was fun to me. I know some guys think it's don't get that, but I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think you have to because if you don't, it's really really hard. Early in my career, I was like trying to get going on the road and stuff like that. Like you don't realize how much I don't like to drive very much. And when
Okay.
you get into college football coaching, you find out that you have to drive a whole ton.
Right.
So I learned to love it really really quick.
Yeah.
But it's pretty cool. I rotate between music, podcasts, audiobooks, all
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. So it gives you a good time alone in the car just to kind of think and be with yourself. And I think getting to meet and talk with the kids is so much fun. Like
Yeah,
it's such a
yeah.
blast.
That was the best. That was the best for me. Well, all right. Well, let's get into this, Coach. First question I ask everybody: talk to me about how the offensive line has played an important role in some of the better teams that you've been a part of.
Yeah, I think, the funny thing about coaching offensive line, you're one of the few coaches on the field that is responsible for almost half of the unit, right? So, I
Mhm.
think the thing that makes coaching offensive line really, really unique is, for better or for worse, you're almost setting kind of the standard and the culture for the team a lot of the time. Very few tough teams that I've been a part of, mentally tough, physically tough, have had weak-minded or weak offensive linemen, and then vice versa. So
Right.
I think if you want to be part of that, offense that really doesn't take no crap and just wants to bully people, score a bunch of points, do all that kind of stuff. I think it kind of all starts up front, as cliche as that is.
Yeah.
But no, I think it does a really good job of kind of setting the culture and setting, hey, this is who we are. This is what we're going to be. And it all starts up front a lot of the time, which I think is really, really awesome.
Yeah, I think you're the second guy I've heard in the last couple of weeks that's mentioned the fact of like it's 5 out of 11 guys. It's the
Mhm.
almost half of the offense out there that we're responsible for. Um, and I don't know if I ever really, I'm sure I've thought of that, but I don't know if that's ever really like resonated in my brain how much that it's and even and like especially at the D3 level too, like you might be responsible for tight ends too. So like you might have
Yeah.
in some offensive personnel groups, you've got the majority of the players on the field, that you're responsible for that are kind of under your watch, making sure they don't screw up. So they're
Yeah.
we as O-line coaches, we're we're a special group, and I think it takes a special group person to coach a group like that. But it's the best in my opinion. I don't think I could do anything other than coach offensive line at this point.
No, it was funny. So, and this is getting into a little bit of like how I got to where I'm at type deal.
Well,
But
go. That's a good
when
good
perfect,
segue because that was my next
yeah,
question was going to be
guys,
you played at Geneva where you got your start.
yep.
How did kind of that talk to me about how that all happened?
Yeah, so I was lucky enough to play with and then coach with Gino DeMarco, who just finished up his 33rd season as a head coach at Geneva College. This was his last season there. He's staying on as in a coaching role, but my experience, and I'll dive into it, has been really unique
Hmm.
because the couple head coaches I've coached for so far in my young career. One has been a guy that has been a head coach for 33 years and has been around the block, went from NAI to D3, transitioned that way, and now the head coach that I'm working for, Millsaps, when I got hired down here, it was his first year as a head coach. So I
Okay.
really got both unique ends of the spectrum. But no, I was lucky enough to play for Gino. Right after college, I worked down in DC in private fundraising for about 5 months and realized that it wasn't for me. I
Yeah.
was taking the metro in and out of work. I love DC. Me and my wife went there for our first anniversary because it's such an awesome city.
Yeah.
But I was like, I can't do this. I had helped out in the spring after I got done playing. And then I texted Gino when I was working. I'm like, hey, like, how's the team looking? Blah 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 blah. And I was like, hey, I think I I remember talking to my parents, and I was like, I think I owe it to myself to try this coaching thing out.
Hmm.
Um, at least once because I was working in DC. I had been accepted into law school. And my parents ran a business, and I always make the joke with my wife, and she doesn't think it's as funny as I am. I'm like, you could add a lawyer, you could add a private fundraiser, you could add all these things. You end up with a
Right.
football coach, so you really lost the lottery there. But started off as a volunteer with Gino in my first year. Was up there for the season, worked at home in the
Hmm.
off season, really liked it. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna give this GA thing a shot, see how that goes. I was a GA for a year. Then I became the full time offensive line coach. It was my first season was COVID as a full
Okay.
time coach. Yeah, which was that was an exciting time for
Yeah.
everybody. And then I spent 6 years at Geneva total as a coach. The last year I was the offensive coordinator there, which was really really awesome.
Yeah.
Um, and then I joined Millsaps. I took the Millsaps job. God bless my wife. She's awesome. I left Geneva to go chase a little bit more money and some stuff like that,
Sure. Sure.
and really wasn't happy where I was at. And a spot at Millsaps opened up in mid July, and I was like, hey, I'm like, I don't even know where Mississippi is on the map. Don't know what Jackson looks like. But
Right.
I'm like, hey, I neither of us are really happy right now. Like, let's take a shot. So I think I have the most unique story. I got down to Millsaps. August 1 was my first day. I picked
Okay.
up from Latrobe, Pennsylvania, and moved to Jackson, Mississippi. With my wife stayed up there until after the season was over, and this, that, and the other, and man, it was, you talk about a culture shock, man. I mean,
Yeah.
it
Oh
was
yeah.
it was completely different. But all the credit to the head coach I'm working for right now, Brandon Lechtenberg. He's on the phone with me saying, hey, this is going to be a championship program.
Hmm.
We're going to build this thing back to what it was. And I'm like, hey, this guy's got me convinced. Like, I'm ready to run through a wall for this dude. And then I looked at the record from the last year before he was there, and I'm like, oh, they're 1-9. I'm like, oh crap, like what did I get
Right.
myself into? And luckily we were able to go 5-5 in our first season, and then we just went 6-4 this
Yep.
past year. So he's the couple head coaches I've been really blessed to work with so far in my coaching career have been a great football coaches, but b even
Right.
better, which is a really big deal.
No, that's what I mean. That's what you want, especially as for a guy like you moving, halfway across the country almost. It's you don't want to pick up and do all that for a
Mm.
guy that A, you don't respect,
Yep.
and B, you isn't going to be there, right? Like you're not going to
Yep.
go work for a guy who's not putting the right things in the program, and making the changes that need to be made. Was there, I'm always fascinated by guys who coach at the place they played. Did you find any kind of rough parts of the transition from going from player to coach, or was there enough of a buffer window of kind of a season or two away that it wasn't like you were coaching the guys you were spending time with after games? Was there enough of that window before
Uh,
you came back?
no, sir. No,
No.
I literally the seniors that were there were juniors when I played. You know
Okay.
what I
Oh,
mean?
okay.
So
Okay.
so yeah, it was yeah, I was only out of football. And honestly I joke I was never really out of football ever. You
Right.
know what I mean? So but no, and that was a unique challenge because one of our starting guards actually I lived with when he was a freshman and I was a sophomore. You know what I mean? So
Yep.
now luckily like the thing that I think helped that ease that transition was the senior class I graduated with. I think there were like 5 or 6 offensive linemen that all started
Hmm.
that or played, graduated then. So his name was Nate. Nate was really the only senior in that class, and me and him were close enough that I could be like, "Hey, dog, like there's boundaries to this thing now, and
Sure.
this, that, and the other." And the good thing about it was the guys that I would end up coaching when they got to be their senior year. Those were guys that were freshmen and sophomores when I was senior. So they kind of already saw me as authority figure is the wrong kind of word, but I guess there was like a mutual respect there
Right. Right. I
because
get.
they
I,
knew
I get what you're saying. Yeah.
I cared. And it's actually funny you bring that up. Me and one of my coaches were talking about this yesterday. Like there's such a special thing about being able to coach in a place you played because those guys care.
Hmm.
Like I wasn't making what I was making at Geneva and doing what I was doing, putting the hours in because I did it for the overtime I was getting or anything like
Right.
that.
Right.
I wish, right? But I did it because I loved the place. I wanted to see it succeed, and I wanted to see Gino succeed. And
Right.
I think anytime you're able to go back and coach in a place where you've played, I think there's just so much more buy-in there. So
Yeah. Yeah. I was in a unique experience where I actually got to go back and coach against the place I played.
mm,
So that was a little motivating too, of like, hey,
sure.
let's go kind of stick it to these guys a little bit. But I can. Again, like I said, I'm always fascinated by guys who make that jump, especially at the place they play, because everyone's different. Some guys don't have the luxury of the respect that you got. Some guys have to really put their foot down hard with
Yeah.
with with some of the players. So it's always kind of interesting to me how that goes and how that's handled and I'm sure your head coach at the time kind of put a bug in those guys' ears too and said, "Hey, he's not, he's your buddy. He can still be your friend, but like there's a line. Let's not cross it." And so
And I think Gino DeMarco taught me a ton of lessons. And I think the thing that has resonated with me the most that when now, because I mean, my God, I turned 30 this year, which is like the most terrifying thing I think I've ever, no 20-year-old thinks they're ever going to live to 30,
right.
but now I'm the one who's giving advice to young coaches. And
Yeah.
the one thing I remember Gino sitting down and talking to me about was, hey, you need to be yourself. You don't want to try
Yeah.
to be this coach or that coach or, because I'm a laid back guy. I'm only going to get hot if I need to get hot. My blood pressure's high as it is already. I don't need to give it any more help than anything else. So,
Right.
but no, it's one of those kind of things. Like I think that really helped that transition. Is I wasn't trying to be so close-fisted, if that makes sense. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah.
I said, hey, the funniest thing about it is, because nobody ever calls me Chris, they call me Corrado. It wasn't the biggest thing was they were still calling me Corrado, 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 rather than
Hmm.
coach or anything like that. And it was one of those things like at first I got really, really bent out of shape about. And the other thing I'm like, at the end of the day, they're listening to what I'm saying. They're going out
Right.
and they're playing hard for us. They could call me purple for all I care. You know what
Right.
I mean? Like it doesn't. So I think
It's
some
not
of
a
that
battle
stuff
worth
too.
that's not a battle worth fighting because
That's right.
it's just gonna cause a rift.
That's right. That's correct.
Yeah, and right, because I get what you're saying. Like we as coaches fight to we work hard to be coaches. Like
Right.
give us the respect, but like you said too, it's to them. I mean, some coaches prefer to be called by their first name. So like
Yeah.
the times they do. In my opinion, here's my thoughts on it, and then
Yeah.
you can tell me I'm an idiot. The times they do call you coach, you know that it's working. Like if
Yeah.
they do, like they call you Corrado, but then when they're like, "Hey, coach," you're like, "Oh, okay." It makes
Yeah.
it's clicking in there. They know what's going on, and it kind of
Yeah.
it means a little bit more than if you just stick it to them every time they don't.
Right. And I think, and this is where I think coaching for young guys, especially, right? Um, Guys that are just starting to break out, because that's the great thing about Division 3 coaching is a lot of the time the young guys we're getting are guys that this is the first time ever coaching anything,
Yeah,
so that's to me that's awesome because I get to see what I was like and I get to, and whether they listen or not, that's
right.
on them. But I get to see them make the same mistakes, and hey, I made these mistakes before. But I think there's the best coaches do a really good job of walking the line between being a person that your players want to be around
Hmm.
and also being someone that can command the respect of the room,
Hmm.
and command respect of the scout team when you're setting up that drill or, anything, right? One of the funniest things, and I always tell guys, I said, when I was doing scout team, when I first started out, the offensive staff hated me because I was losing my mind about the defensive scout team, how great they were, what a great look. I knew them all by
Yeah,
first name. It wasn't, hey, number 32, come here and do, this, what, that. You know what I mean? It's doing that kind of stuff, building relationships like that. Because at the end of the day, that's what this business is about. Is if your kids know that you care about them, it doesn't matter if you call inside zone 50 times in a row into a 8-man box. They're going to get it done as best as they can.
right.
So that's always the thing I want to implore. It's not all about blowing your whistle and dog cussing somebody out. It's you want to learn these kids, know them, and walk that line, because it can go bad the other way too.
Yeah, no, 100%. I agree. I couldn't agree more. I think it's so important. Even like you mentioned, even knowing their names, like that's such an important thing to these guys, especially at our level of D3, or your level of D3.
Mm-hmm.
It's so important to know their names and know more about them than just kind of what they do on the field.
Right.
That important piece is often overlooked, I think. But so you kind of you mentioned in your bio you guys were option wing T at
Mm-hmm.
Geneva. Um, was that something? Two part question. Was that something that you ran when you were a player? And how did you adapt that offense when you became the offensive coordinator, or were you not allowed to? Were you kind of were you told to not touch anything, just run this offense? Kind of how did those things come about?
Well, so I'll tell you. So as a player, I did run it. So we
Okay.
went from my first 2 years there, we were air raid, and then flipped the absolute script. My junior senior year went option,
Yeah.
which at the time, like it's so funny to think about. I thought I knew football then, and I had no clue. To know that we just went from running, just how different those two schemes are,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
in my mind, it's like, oh, we're gonna run less zone and run more power, like and then you get it, and you're like, oh wow. The second part of the question, so I'll tell you a story, and then I'll tell you, and then I'll answer the question. So
Sure.
my the first year I called the offense. I wasn't. It was my second year as the offensive line coach, as a full time offensive line coach,
Hmm.
and we were playing a game against St. Vincent College, and like this is gonna sound so corny, but it was super hot out, like really like it was really warm. Head coach had a little bit of. He was like, hey, you got this play. You got to call it.
Hmm.
It was like a 4th and 3, and I'm like, oh
Right.
word, and so I'm like, okay, I called midline for a 50-yard gain. And then after that, I became the offensive coordinator.
Right.
It was one of those kind of things. We ended up scoring a bunch of points that game. We won. We came at it. I remember, and I'll tell you this too. It was probably a mix of the nerves and the heat. Because I'm an idiot. I don't know my own weakness. I was out in the sun with no hat or anything, so I got toasted. I've
Right.
got like half heat exhaustion, like half our players. I'm sticking my head out of the car window that we took down there, driving back on the highway because I'm so sick to my stomach because yeah, I'm just so excited and I'm hot.
Yeah.
But I get back to the office and I'm like, I wonder if I'm the offensive coordinator now. And I wonder if I'm going to get to do this again next week.
Right.
But God bless you. I want to say I was 25 or 26 at the time, and he let me have it and threw me in the deep end, um, and gave me a lot of really good support.
Yeah.
But it's one of those kind of things. And the change that happened, to answer your question, so it's so unique because everybody that looks at the academy say, well, the academy's all run option, and guys that have been around it know that yeah, they all run option, but they all have their different variations, right?
Hmm.
Zone option was a big fad right when I came into coaching. That's kind of worked itself out a little bit. You're back to your traditional like lead option stuff like that. But
Hmm.
we transitioned a little bit more from the Army kind of Navy hybrid, where it was a lot more like, hey, we've got the guys up front. We're just going to run it 4 yards in a cloud of dust.
Yeah.
We went more to the Air Force version where we were using different formations. We were throwing the football more.
Okay.
We threw for 1,000 yards, I think twice when I was there as the offensive coordinator. So it was one of those kind of deals that you know we started to understand that you get to see man to man every week, and a lot of times cover zero because we had some. We ended up having a wing that went and played Division II football, and then we had a dive back that was a really, really good football player that was all conference. So you had to respect it.
Hmm.
So we started, we saw 8-man boxes, and we're like, hey, we have receivers that can beat man coverage, and we had a first. We might be one of the only option schools that had a first team all conference receiver for 2 years. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
it wasn't because he was a stud at blocking. It's because he could run by people on go balls and posts.
Right.
So no, I think that's the again, credit to Gino, like and it was great. Like Gino, Coach DeMarco, he worked with Mike Seawalk back in his GA days, so I got a chance to meet with Coach Seawalk a couple of occasions and talk through him about some of the option stuff and the passing game off of it and how you
Hmm.
got to stuff when he was at Georgia Tech. And then talking to some guys down at Navy and some different stuff like that. So but no, it was a really, really cool experience. And to Gino's credit, there were a couple things that I knew I wouldn't be able to change. I didn't change any of the play names, any of the
Right.
formation names, but I think he let the one thing I can say is that was the Geneva offense was our offense. What we weren't
Right.
trying to be Army, we weren't trying to be Georgia Tech, we were trying to be Geneva, and what worked for us, which I give them all the credit for.
No, that's cool. It's so neat. It's such there's so many pieces of that offense in every offense nowadays. Like it's everyone always is like, "Oh, I'm not, I would and I was one of those guys too, like jokingly all the time on Twitter would be like, "Oh, the single wing, I'm never running that stuff." Well,
Mhm.
I kind of am when I run my quarterback. Like
That's right.
it is single wing stuff. Like there are so many bases to it. Did you were you able to kind of were you able to bring any of those things with you to Millsaps, or were they able? Did they kind of say, "Hey, how would you block this at Geneva?" With some stuff.
Not as much that, but I think the thing when I got down here, because the one of the biggest reasons I left Geneva is I was at that place for 10 years. Like,
Hmm.
you want to see something else.
Sure.
And from a career standpoint, there, as much as I love the option, that ain't an easy sell to a lot of people anymore, which I get.
Right.
But I think the biggest thing is the way I watch, and we're a heavy RPO offense down here. So the way I watch us operate and how we read things and how we try to put defenders in conflict,
Hmm.
That's where I see a lot of the similarities, because at the end of
Hmm.
the day, the modern day offense is, hey, how do we put the extra defender in conflict? You know what I
Hmm.
mean? And is the option guys will say, hey, we're gonna pitch off of them, we're gonna be under center or in the gun and this, that, and the other. And a lot of the modern offense guys, hey, we're gonna throw slips, we're gonna throw slants, we're gonna throw nows,
Right.
so just how you attack the offense, is different. But I think that gave me, a lot of being in such an RPO heavy scheme. It really kind of lent itself to that. It's not like we're a 12 personnel team where, okay, how do you control the eighth defender? Okay, well, he's got to make the tackle. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, Like, who cares about the eighth defender? So I think
Right.
that part of putting defenders into conflict, how you're going to put them into conflict. I think that's the part that really translated over from when I was at Geneva to when I came to Millsaps.
Right. The ever long chess match that is football between offense and defense.
That's right.
So it's the best. All right. Well, last question I got for you. If you could build a Mount Rushmore of offensive linemen, from guys you've coached, guys you played with, or guys you're a fan of, who would be on that five-man offensive line?
Well, yeah. So I am halfway prepared for this question because we have a Mike Riddleman is somebody that I got to know through the Joe Moore camp up when I was in
Oh yeah,
Pittsburgh and
yeah,
that
yeah.
kind of stuff. So I text him like, "Hey, I'm going to be on this podcast," and that jerk says, "Oh, that's cool." And then I'm looking through your selection and I see Mike did it like 3 years ago. I'm like, "Dude, you didn't tell me that you did the dang podcast." I'm going. So I went back and listened to his deal. So I'm halfway prepared for the question.
Okay.
I'm kind of going to do a little mix match of it. So I'm going to do a couple guys that I coach, some pro guys, that kind of stuff.
Sure.
The the I coached a center at Geneva who was, I think, 3-time like all conference, all that kind of stuff, who was the most unassuming cat you've ever seen, would carry like a portfolio to all of his classes. He graduated with his MBA in 4 years. He was wicked smart.
Yeah.
Um, but he was like that 230-pound center. But could squat. I mean, he'd come into camp every year and squat 515. We'd say, okay, hey, you're done. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
but he was I'd always tell him and if Coach Marco listens, this will he'll be able to nail me on this. He was only ever 225 pounds, even though I told Gino, hey, he's 235,
It's too.
240. But he was such an embodiment of just a like headsy cerebral football player, man, and
Hmm.
tough as nails, and a great kid. A kid I coached down here was a 2-time all conference kid, tackle Larry Francois from St. Aug, New Orleans. I'll need to send this to him because he thought he'd always think I was his favorite. So I love leaning into that now because all of his buddies get on him about it. And so, but he was a great football player, man. Super physical, super coachable. Started to listen to a guy from Pittsburgh who he had no idea where that was on a map. So I give him all the credit
Right.
there. Um, Two guys that I really loved when I was a young kid coming up. Dan Deerdorf,
Oh
huge,
yeah.
huge pull. Both my front teeth are both crowns, and most of my college career I was playing with a fang. My crown had fallen out, and I had this big beard and long hair. I looked like I was out of the hills of West Virginia, but that was such a dude. He wasn't like as big as the guys are now, but it was one of those kind of deals. Like he was tough as nails, man. Just a
Mm,
physical punch you in the face football player that I really kind of loved to see and kind of related to when I was coming up.
hmm.
And then everybody talks about the Steelers, man, and they talk about the defense, but like you've got guys for the Steelers like Mike Webster,
Oh yeah.
Tunch Kid, like you've got some great offensive linemen in there. Alan Faneca is my personal favorite. I'll steal that one from Mike.
Oh, that's a
Just
good
just
one.
just an absolute stud of a
Yeah.
football player, man. Great guard. I can't remember if he's been inducted in the Hall of Fame yet or not, but when he
He
does,
is. He is. He
I
is.
was just saying I knew that he was kind of going like year to year,
Hmm.
I'm the worst football coach ever, man. I hardly watch NFL football. It's so bad, like
Yeah.
it's yeah. But I'm such a scumbag like that, but that's okay. But and then last, I don't think any list could be complete without Larry Allen. I mean, that guy is
Yeah.
just an absolute freak of nature. I can still remember, gosh, this is probably when I was in college because I was I love the weight room, man. I don't love it as much anymore, but when I was in college, I loved it. I'll never forget the video of him benching like 600 pounds and stuff like that. And
Yeah,
whether he got it legit or not is whatever. But
doesn't matter.
because I remember that dude throwing around like 500 pounds like it was nothing. And I'm like, dog, he could tell me that he could bench 800 and I believe him. You know what
Yeah,
I mean? So,
yeah.
but and I wanna I'm gonna add a little bit onto the here. All right, because
Yep.
I truly love hockey. Hockey is my life.
Okay.
I'm a huge Pittsburgh Penguins fan. I got to watch them beat Ottawa in person in Game 7 back when they won the Cup for the second time. I've got to hold Stanley Cup. It's
Oh wow.
that's like if you put a gun to my head, man, and ask me, hey, what sport do you want to watch, football or hockey? I'm watching hockey every single time. But
I'm probably not that far off either. I'm a
yeah,
big hockey fan too. Yeah.
I was just say you're a Midwest guy, and I
I'm a
know hockey's
Blackhawks
great.
fan. Yeah. I'm
Yeah,
a Blackhawks fan.
that's a shame, man.
I
Hate to
know.
see it.
I know.
It's so funny thinking about all those times when like Justin Tays and Patrick Kane and all those guys were great.
Yeah.
I don't think Sid Evgeny. I don't think they ever played in a Stanley Cup or anything like that, which is so funny to think
No,
about. I
the
don't think that they had.
Mario beat the Blackhawks for a cup in like 92 or 93. I
Right.
think the second of Mario's cups was against the
Yeah.
Blackhawks.
Gotcha.
But they never crossed paths
Yeah.
in the recent years.
Yeah, it's just so funny to think about. But I want to go on record for anybody that's willing to listen. If they tune into hockey and they don't think that Sidney Crosby is a top three hockey player of all time, like I'm
Yeah.
talking bump Bobby Orr, bump whoever you need to out of that, that's fine because the stuff Sid's right now on pace for 53 goals. I'm over the moon, even though the Pens haven't been as good the past couple of
Yeah.
years, man. But for everybody, I don't know what it is. I don't think it has any relation to football at all, man. But there's something awesome about watching hockey. I think
It's
it's such an
exciting.
awesome sport, and it's really, really, it's when you can follow the puck and learn the game a little bit. Like
Yeah.
I'm no expert, trust me. It's a really cool game to watch.
Hockey, I'll say this and then I'll let you get out of here. Hockey, I love football. I will watch football. Nothing gets me out of my seat like a goal in hockey though.
Yeah,
Like if there's a goal in hockey, whether you're at home, whether you're in the at the rink, whether you're wherever, like if it's a big goal, you get out of your seat. It's there's nothing but I mean, I remember I know you don't want to hear about it, but I remember when the when Kane scored that goal against the Flyers to win the
yep,
cup, the first of the
mhm,
Blackhawks cups, that was like such a weird random goal.
yep,
I remember jumping up and being like, "What just happened?" Like talking to
yeah,
myself in my apartment, like, "What just happened? What?" And so like nothing. No, I love football as much as the next guy, but I don't do that with football. It doesn't not at least watching it on TV, like
yep.
live maybe it's a little bit different, but watching it on TV, it doesn't happen to me. So I get the excitement of hockey.
No, I can still remember. This is probably as much hockey as I've seen. My fondest memory when I was, gosh, it was '07. It was the year the Pens played the Red Wings back to back years
Hmm.
in the Stanley Cup. It was the year that they lost. They went to triple overtime, and I can still remember staying up until 2 Eastern on this little box TV I had in my room. And I was young enough to be standing. I was standing on a chair, like looking at it because it was so small you couldn't see. And I'll never forget Peter Sikora scoring a goal in the third overtime to
Yeah,
send it to like game 6 or something like that. And I was at that point I was in love. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like Chris Osgood in Detroit was my worst enemy. You
yeah,
know, and now the guys down here bust my rear end about it because I you talking about anybody could beat the Flyers for anything. I don't care. That's a absolute joke organization. I can't stand the Philadelphia Flyers, man. So, but no, it's hockey is one of those sports where a lot of the time my wife is I'll be sitting in a room watching the game on my phone or something like that, and
yeah,
I'll be cussing or doing this, that, or the other, getting excited. And she's like, "What are you watching?" I'm like, "I'm watching the Pens." Like, don't worry about it.
yeah.
Like,
It's a hockey game.
yeah, that's right.
Love it.
So
All right, man. Well, do me a favor, drop your Twitter handle for everybody, and anything else you need the listeners to know.
yeah, so you can follow me at OL Coach Corrado, Corrado. And I think I just did there. Watch hockey. It's the best. I think it's the best sport on planet Earth right now. It's a great one to watch. So
Awesome.
that's
Well,
all. I appreciate you having me on.
no, man. I appreciate you coming on. You're gonna be my new hockey texter. I'm gonna text you about hockey from now on. So be
Okay,
ready for it, man.
I
Um,
appreciate that.
yeah. Well, good luck in recruiting, man. appreciate you coming on and looking forward to talking with you soon.
Absolutely. Hey, have a good rest of your day.
All right, take care, man.